Israelis have shown repeatedly over the last decade that they have assets on the ground in Iran. That's how they exfiltrated all the nuclear files a few years ago from a warehouse in central Tehran. That's how they killed Fakhrizadeh, the nuclear scientist, about 5 years ago. So, you know, the Israelis would have been planning for this for a very long time. So they'll have a suite of options which they'll have given to Netanyahu. Can they destroy the nuclear program entirely? No, they can't, because you'd also need to destroy all the knowledge that the Iranians have. I assume part of the calculation is also to do with the way that Iranians themselves respond, which is one of the reasons why they've been striking regime targets, like the commander of the armed forces and the commander of the Revolutionary Guard, in the expectation that the 70% of Iranians who really loathe the regime in Tehran will take some sort of action. I mean, all of this is there's a series of bets being made about how this is going to play out.
Yes, the Middle East being a set of dominoes and strategic, several kind of competing power points within the Middle East. In terms of Europe, where does Europe feature in this, or doesn't it at all? I mean, it does. Starmer's statement this morning, all parties urging all parties to step back and reduce tensions urgently. Where are European leaders in this?
Yeah, that statement is incredibly boilerplate. I mean, there is a European role because of the snapback sanctions. So which makes the IAEA meeting earlier this week important, because they issued a motion of censure against the Iranians and determined that the Iranians were in breach of their commitments to the IAEA, particularly in terms of enrichment and allowing access. And the Iranians have said they've enriched a significant amount of extra uranium to 60% purity, which is very close to 90%, which you need for weapons. And at the time, I saw as clearing the path to the E3, which is Britain, France, and Germany, deciding to reimpose snapback sanctions by October, which is when their ability to do so expires. So there's a period now of 3 to 4 months where the E3, have to decide whether they play the last card in the European hand into this game. Now, but we, the British and the French and the Germans, have all been hanging actually quite tough on this. So I thought we may well do this. I think the chances, and of course the reaction now will be conditioned by what happens with this particular conflict, but I think the chances of those snapback sanctions being imposed in October are actually extremely high now, because the Iranians, whatever happens, they can't afford to back down in terms of enrichment.
How much degradation of the military capacity and the economy of Iran will Russia and China stand for?
Well, the economy is tanking in Iran. I mean, it's dreadful. Inflation is extremely high. They can't keep the lights on the whole time. There's a massive set of water shortages across the country. And I think, you know, if you're an ordinary Iranian looking across the Gulf at Abu Dhabi or Qatar or Saudi Arabia, you're wondering why you can't have this in your country. I mean, Khamenei famously described the Saudis as the camel herders of Riyadh, and yet it turns out that the camel herders of Riyadh are doing extremely well in reconstructing an economy for the 21st century, and the Iranians aren't. So there's, you know, so that sort of comparison of prosperity and welfare, which the Iranians will see across the Gulf, is politically consequential. The Russians and the Chinese, I mean, you know, the Chinese like getting discounted, smuggled Iranian oil. I don't think the Russians and the Chinese have massive economic interests inside Iran. I mean, the economy is so bad. What the Iranians have done with Russia is supply them with missiles for use in Ukraine and drones and so forth, and other military equipment. That's valuable. And the Iranians will try and cash in on that particular relationship. But my guess, I mean, the Russians and the Chinese will condemn this, of course, but I don't see them actually intervening actively to try and stop this or indeed shape it significantly.
So then how far do you think that Israel will go, you know, and what would be the advice if you were in this role now about how to deal with this? As you say, this game of chess where a lot of players are trying to step away and not be dragged into further conflict. How far is Israel going to go?
once Israel started, they're going to have to take this as far as they possibly can. I don't see that there's any mileage for them in letting up. They will have a range of targets. I assume they will try and strike every single declared and maybe some undeclared nuclear sites and do as much damage as they can. They've already taken out effectively Iran's air defences. So, and they did a lot of damage last year, as one of your interviewers was saying earlier. There is a question of how far they will go in this decapitation strategy. So they've hit a lot of senior figures in the military and security sphere. They also attacked the house of Ali Shamkhani, who was the former head of the High National Security Council and was a key figure in the nuclear talks. He seems to have survived, but is in hospital. So they're going after a lot of these sort of military security figures. Who else are they going to go after? I mean, I assume they've got a list, and at some point, there will be a question of whether they go for the civilian members of the regime, as they did, of course, with Hezbollah and Hamas. A lot will depend now on what impact the Iranian response, these drones, presumably followed by cruise or ballistic missiles, will have on Israel. I mean, if there's serious damage, then the Israelis will hit back even harder. But even without that, I mean, this looks to me like a week, probably, of attacks. And then if it doesn't escalate, that's it. But the chances of all this escalating, because the Iranians will need to be seen to be hitting back as hard as they can. They have limited options, particularly with the degradation of Hezbollah. This puts them in a really, really difficult position.